Welcome back to Tying That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my good buddy, not Timothy Frank. This is a sexy, smoldering Evan Turner. And before you say a word, Evan Turner, keep your mouth closed. I'm gonna brag about my good buddy here for a second. A long time ago, maybe 11, 12, 13 years ago, Evan was a suit. He was a movie executive, making things happen. He was a hot shot. And Evan has always had this call. He loves films, and he had this call to be a writer. And so he decided to leave it all behind and start writing. And I'm so proud of him because right now he currently has the #1 movie on Netflix, #1 movie in the world, and it is a good time. It's called The Outlaws, and you can watch it right now. Joseph, let's give him a round of applause.
I'll give myself applause. A plug. This was a plug. Wow.
Joseph,
I'm part of a plug.
Joseph, have you seen The Outlaws yet?
I have not seen it yet. Actually, I was going to watch. No. Hey. It's not my fault. I brought it up for movie night with the family. I said, let's watch The Outlaws. And my daughter saw the trailer. You know, we had 3 movies. She saw a couple of trailers, and then she saw The Outlaws, and she was like, "That's a movie I want to watch."
Nice.
Oh, that's what
so what did you watch instead? What won?
Honestly, it.
Wait, so you're saying everything your daughter wants to watch, you watch the opposite?
Dude, I have a wife and 2 girls. Yeah. I try to get them where I want. You know, it's like me wanting to watch the Evil Dead movie. The new one. I kept saying, "Hey, let's watch it together." And of course, my daughter was like, "eh." And then she has a sleepover with her friend, and she watches it. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised that she watched it later that night or something. But it's on the list.
Yeah, how's it feel, Evan? Feels good?
It feels great. I mean, look, as much as I allow myself to feel good things,
and we got to mention your partner,
it
Ben.
Feels great. Yeah, Ben Zazov, the more talented one. I'm just the face of the operation. It feels really good. I mean, you don't know how the things are going to do. And, I had kind of mentally decided I just wanted it to be in the top 10, the Netflix top 10, and for it to be #1 over the weekend and continuing. It's still the #1 movie. And like in the world, when I heard that was kind of crazy. But like, this is the #1 movie in the world outside a couple territories, South Korea, France, places with clearly no taste.
What do South Koreans know?
What do they?
The French are assholes, Lloyd.
Comedy. By the way, though, France, you're right. Like the joke about France is they love Jerry Lewis, right? And this is a big broad comedy. So that was strange to me, but who fucking knows? I'm happy that people are really liking it. I'm getting a lot of kind calls and texts and things from friends, people I haven't spoken to in a long time that see it and, hear my voice in it, and they appreciate it in that way. So
what about your family? Have they reached out and are they excited for you?
Yeah, my dad's watched it 10 times. He's watched it 10 times. He watched it with I love that he turned the subtitles on because he wanted to make sure he wasn't missing a joke. And there's a joke that the main character found when I pitch it this way, it doesn't feel like a very funny joke, but that they found their grandfather dead and that he died jerking off while asphyxiating himself. It kind of goes like this thing. And he goes it's like when we found Grandpa Seymour, Grandpa Seymour is my actual grandfather who did not die that way for the record. But come on. I was very worried about my dad hearing that joke because, my grandfather's long passed, but he's, especially in a Jewish family, you look to the patriarch of the family, that was Seymour. So was I speaking ill of the dead? But he thinks it's fucking hilarious. So go figure.
I could just see old Grandpa Seymour looking down from heaven and being like, "Oh, my grandson's got a movie on and watching." And be like, "Wait a minute, what?" It's like,
well, the crazy thing. Look, I will say I watched a lot of dumb, funny movies with my grandfather. Like my grandfather loved Benny Hill. He had a big, bellowing, great laugh, and I actually think he would have loved the movie, even that joke. So that's part of why I was okay making him the butt of that joke.
Right.
But yeah, thank you for asking. Thank you for the plug. That's fun to have a plug to be part of that. But
well, this is good. this is the number one podcast in the world. From past, future, and present. Like we won. Like so this is good. This is going to be good for you.
all things number one.
It's going to be number one for like a month now because of podcasts, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It'll be like Willow back in the day that stayed in the theater for like 4 months. Or
did Willow stay in the theater for 4 months?
It had like an epic long run. Back to the Future was in the theater for I think 6 months. Like there were times where movies that would just catch on and they were just in theaters.
The one I remember that was insane was Pretty Woman. I'd love to like actually see the numbers on that, but Pretty Woman, I feel like I remember being in theaters for like a year.
So I'm wondering though, since it has your good buddy Pierce in the film, Wes, was this shot near you?
No, he lived in the town where we live, and I remember, Evan, when we first saw Pierce at the Hill, and you had a long conversation with him. Were you talking about this movie?
I'm trying to remember. That's a good question, and I totally remember the day. He was here when he was shooting Black Adam. So my friend Beau Flynn produced Black Adam, and I'd been talking to Beau, and Beau was like, "Hey, Pierce Brosnan is in your town. Say hello to him. You should introduce yourself to him."
Wait, is Beau Flynn married to Marley Shelton?
Yes.
Oh, I know Marley. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's very Beau, like connect.
Yeah.
You guys would like each other, whatever. Yeah. So I don't think they'd even made the offer to him yet. So I think I was just like connecting the dots of like, Beau Flynn is a friend of mine and a colleague, and if you need anything, I'm here to help.
Oh, interesting. I always thought that you were talking to him about the movie. So no, he wasn't even on your radar.
He wasn't even on the radar for that. You know, Rachel did a movie with him. Are we allowed to say Rachel's name?
You didn't say her last name. But yeah, you can say, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So she was like, "Oh, I'm having dinner with him." And I just told him my brother-in-law wrote the movie that he agreed to do, come out. And we went and drank for a while. I want to say all night. If I'm pumping up the story, I'll say we drank all night.
Pumping up the story. You drank all night. You woke up naked. All night. You have no idea what happened.
They closed down the restaurant. The owner, Nick, Nick, came out with a bottle of scotch, and we were just chugging from the bottle. I'm chugging with Pierce Brosnan, my hero. I've already gotten drunk enough that I've asked him for a signed copy of GoldenEye.
Was it just you and him?
No. It was Rachel, Jamie, him, his son.
Yeah. You know who was missing with that thing?
You maybe. You're probably shooting, you're probably gone shooting your show. But it was great. And it was, by the way, the heart of COVID. And I was like, if I get COVID from Pierce Brosnan, I don't give a fuck. Like I will happily take
COVID
that.
or herpes. Like you would gladly take those.
Either one from Pierce Brosnan will be an honor.
Yeah.
Now if I give him those things.
If the head of your penis was a Peachtree disc, you don't care. It doesn't matter. That might be a little bit harsh. We might want to cut that. That might be the Patreons.
Whose idea? Who gets to decide what gets cut? You or Joseph?
Probably Joe. I mean,
I'm the producer, dude.
Yeah,
so I have ultimate control.
Hey,
every so often they'll watch something and we're like, I didn't think that was going to be it in the show.
Do the Patreons ever say, you should probably cut that?
Well, I do have a first pass, like where if I have any concerns, I say, "Hey, you think this is too much?" But we've been pretty good with that. Now, I'll admit.
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I would always, like, whenever you were talking about the show that we just can't talk about, I would always mosaic your mouth and bleep it as well. Yeah. But it was funny. One time, it was that you were talking about somebody else who was in the movie or in the show, and somehow they were able, even with the mosaic, they kind of guessed.
Yeah.
Because you said it was specified that it was a female character.
Yeah.
But the name, when you said it, it was blanked out.
Yeah.
And they kind of had a sneaking suspicion. But of course, when that article came out, they're like, I was right. And I was like, well,
Yeah. So that's really cool. I mean, like, cosmically, you guys connected for this thing. You had that conversation. I could have sworn you guys were talking about the movie, and then later they were like, "Oh, you're doing the movie with my brother-in-law wrote," and then you guys went and drank scotch, and had sex. It's really cool how like all that
The
stuff.
sex was so good. It was so good.
He's James Bond, dude.
It's James Bond. I mean, it's like as a kid, I grew up watching Remington Steele. I mean, did you guys watch like this is lifelong?
Right.
So you had sex with him. What is your Bond girl name then? Because like the Xenia on the top, it's like you gotta have a really catchy name.
Yeah. You have to come up with that, Joseph, and then we'll call him that for the rest of the thing.
There's got to be one of those things where it's like your childhood pet plus the street you grew up on is your Bond whore's name.
All right,
cut that joke. That failed. That joke didn't work. Cut that, Joseph, please.
The you wanting to cut it is funnier than the joke.
Yeah, it is.
Cut that.
That didn't work. Yeah.
So okay, Evan and I, congratulations on your film. Congratulations on Pierce. We are doing the follow-up of Heat. I'm sure you've been busy with kids and everything like that. Oh, by the way, I drove by and I saw you helping, painting on the sidewalk with your kids, and you were bent over, and I just got to say you have a great ass. That was my Al Pacino.
That's a Heat. Yeah, that's a Heat reference.
Heat reference. Al Pacino, great line. No, but I also ordered you and another friend of ours Heat 2, and I know you probably haven't had a chance. Yep, there you go.
Are you done with it?
I am done. I have one more. I want to review the last chapter because I finished it and I was so sleepy last night that I was like in a haze. So I try to remember it today. But for the most part, I finished it and I can't rave about it enough. I really, really enjoyed it. How far have you gotten so far?
So basically what turns out to be kind of a prologue, right? Because it's the tail end of the movie Heat, following Chris Shirless.
Yeah.
As he kind of gets away, and now he looks back and it flashes back to him first meeting Charlene. And I'm super into it. I at first I thought it was just going to be like pick up the second Heat left off, and it was going to be like the chase for Chris or whatever. But I really liked it as a framing device to go back in time and see him first meet her. I don't want you to ruin it for me, but I'm also curious, does it follow basically that pattern?
So the way I'm going to talk about it is I think it's going to like enrich it for you. I don't think I'm going to be very careful not to ruin anything, but it is 3 timelines that are progressing forward all at the same time. So it's 1995, which starts off what you read, which is basically the aftermath of when Neil McCauley gets killed in the robbery and Chris has to flee. And then it goes back to 1988, and that is another big heist and kind of like how the crew is really starting to develop together. They've had a lot of history. And then there's 2000. And what I really love most about this book, and I was tempted to say, right now, I was like, I loved it as much. I loved it more than the movie, but it really is the movie. All it is like as if this whole thing is part of one big story, and the movie's just a snippet of that story. It's interesting because, like on last podcast and this podcast, I think of it differently now because you and I did talk a little bit about the Natalie Portman character and a few things that are like, does that need to be in there? And does that serve the story? And what is it really saying? But when you see the whole, there is everything is there and specifically for a reason that serves the greater story. And I think, and what Michael Mann has said is that all of the book that I read, the whole outline, the whole past, present, and future, that was already developed in terms of the character's backstory. So Val Kilmer knew everything that we read that you're currently reading in the book. So it was his backstories are so researched and so detailed and so specific that nothing is wasted in the movie. And then now when you go back, it's all built and the understanding why. I actually, I think for me, like, my favorite character is Neil McCauley and Chris in the thing, and it's still that way, but I like Vincent Hanna way more now that I kind of know a lot more about him, and the Natalie Portman connection and the relationship that he has to her is now way more poignant and powerful to me. And, just really getting an understanding of how Neil McCauley sees the world and how close him and Chris Shirless are. I guess I'm trying to like not give anything away. But there's a philosophy of Neil McCauley when he went to Folsom early on, started reading Camus, became an existentialist, and started reading.
Is Folsom in the book?
Yeah.
Is it?
Not,
okay, cool.
in referenced. It's not like you see them in prison. It's right. Referenced. It goes way more in detail how him and Chris met and who Chris was before he met Neil and how he kind of absorbed Neil McCauley's philosophy. And Neil McCauley's point of view and philosophy is so strong in the movie. And then you kind of see how that was born and how, and also like experiences in his past. But there's a heist in it that's just as exciting as the bank heist. There's a new antagonist in it that's just as scary as the one. I mean, it's phenomenal. So Michael Mann and Meg Gardner wrote this book, and Meg Gardner popped on my radar. Joseph, do you know who discovered Meg Gardner and kind of popped her off and got her? I mean, she's been writing many books, but the one that kind of took her mainstream, Stephen King.
Nope. Oh,
Stephen King. Stephen King gets crates of books from his editors, and people just want him to read his books or whatever. Well, one day he was on the way to catch a flight. He grabbed a book. And he kind of looking through books to read something. He was flying to London, and he found Meg Gardner's book, and the print was big. And he's like, oh, this is a nice big print. And, it's not going to strain my eyes, whatever. He takes the book, and he read it, and he was like, motherfucker, this she can write. And he became a huge fan. And so she was trying to get a book sold and like kind of struggling kind of thing. And so then he came out in support of her. The next day, she had publication offers, and, and then she became this thing. And so this is the first Meg Gardner book that I read, but I'm gonna dive deep into her and start reading a lot of her stuff.
You're gonna dive deep into her, Wes?
You're still thinking about Pierce, but
true. But, guilty as charged.
So I'm trying to like talk about the book without talking about any specific points, but I will say that the detail that goes into Los Angeles and how Los Angeles is a character. Chicago becomes a character like that, just north of the border in Arizona and south of the border and internationally. And one of the most interesting settings in the book is Paraguay. And also, so since I'm a big Miami Vice fan and a Michael Mann fan and kind of like in his lore and it's almost like, like Amazing Stories for Stephen King in the 80s was like it was an idea dumping ground, like all these ideas that he had, and he would just dump them into Amazing Stories of the things that he had. I feel like this book is like there was like Paraguay was supposed to originally a Miami Vice idea that he was going to have, like, and there's a lot of like his universe with all his stories and movies and everything that he kind of puts into this story. There's a whole international crime element to it and everything. So he's combining a lot of things. Just like LA Takedown was like kind of a rough draft of Heat. And so if you love the movie, I would say like if you go back and read this book and then rewatch the movie, you're going to love it that much more. And the book is the best of Michael Mann, the best of his storytelling ability. And so it's great. Did you see Black Cat?
I did not see Black Cat, no.
Did you see it, Joseph?
Oh, Black Hat.
Oh, Black Cat.
Black Cat.
Sorry, Black
By the
Cat.
way, still haven't seen it.
Yeah. Did you see it, Joseph?
No, I have not seen it yet. It's always been on my list to kind of watch, but it obviously
well, now I know a lot about
known.
Joseph's List because that movie came out 5 years ago.
It came out a while ago, yeah. I saw it. It popped up on HBO Max, Max.
Yeah. But you know what you're going to watch before you watch.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, watch Outlaws before you get around.
Outlaws is definitely, because like it not to give more praise to it, but it definitly looks like a lot of fun and something that definitely the family can enjoy.
What would be fun to do, Evan? I don't know if you're going to have time now that you're got the #1 film in the world. But what would be fun to do is like do a deep dive into your movie, have Ben on and talk about your film, like where your ideas came from. It's so much easier
to talk about other people and be critical of geniuses than talk about yourself. But
right.
Maybe,
yeah. So anyway, we're just wrapping up. I'm a huge fan of the book. When you finish the book, maybe we'll come on and do like because I really want to get into Chris Shiherlis in the book. I mean, he was always like really fascinating to me in the way Val Kilmer played him. But this book leans heavily, like he's a main narrative throughout this, and he's one of Michael Mann's great characters that he created. I mean, in a fucking world full of fantastic characters. Do you have?
I'm definitely digging it so far. It seems really well written. There's parts that read so much like a movie. It almost reads like a movie script. But the authenticity. I mean, there's a scene in I guess it's the first chapter where he's in Mexico. I hope this isn't spoiling too much. It is the first chapter, and he's like looking back at L.A. and the twinkling lights of L.A. but from across the border. And I'm like, I feel like he's been there. I feel like you couldn't write that scene if you had not stood where he stood.
By the way, I think that there's ways to talk about a story that like gets people more interested in wanting to read the story or to watch the thing, and then there's ways to talk about it where it just kind of ruins big moments for them. And what you're saying, like in Mexico and everything, like, so they have an advantage with Heat. Number one, we've already seen the movie, so we already know the characters intimately. So when they start, they can just cut to they can hit the ground running, right? They just start in the middle of action, and it never stops. Number two, Michael Mann is so thorough in his research and his details. I mean, he is obsessive, like notoriously obsessive, loses jobs and budgets and everything because he's so obsessive. But the authenticity, reading about how like law procedures and the like just the sense of humor that cops have, the morbid sense of humor, you can tell like this guy, for Heat, they did 6 months of training with cops, like going on ride-alongs, going and do like just procedural stuff over and over and over. Michael Mann, before that, has been doing stuff like that, and he's been reading all cops' procedures. So when they're in a place and they're describing the setting, you're like, oh, Michael Mann has probably lived there for a month to be able to write this chapter. And then everything law enforcement wise is like, oh, there's nothing bullshit here. This seems like all like grounded in real events and real things that are happening or inspired by certain things. And I think that's one of the things about the book. And what's interesting about the book is they take the momentum after the first movie, and that is the central driving force because they started with the prologue. And then they build these two other stories that are different timelines. And when you will be involved in a timeline to the point where you're just itching for the next to see what happens, whatever, and then it goes to the other timeline. And then they rebuild that story where you're just fucking itching, and they'll come back here. And to the point where you're almost like, I'm not ready to fucking jump back. I want to see what's going on here. And then they just build all three up until it all comes together at the end. There's something, all of these characters and all of their lives are cosmically connected throughout all these timelines and all these places. They're constantly being attracted and exploding off each other, even if they're unaware of it. Do you have any final thoughts on Heat before we...
On the film, or
on the film?
On the book.
On the film.
It's hard to remember all the things we talked about.
Yeah, so that's the thing too. Is like I was like, when we were about to start, I was like, oh shit, what do we talk about? So I was just kind of pushing it forward to talk about Heat 2 and the book and everything like that. But just kind of like what you wanted to say about the film.
I mean, there are things I wanted to talk about. Can I ask you some questions, or do we want to get to Joseph's questions?
Let's go.
Like, who do you, I guess I almost ask this one as a writer, or I think about this one as a writer. I don't think we talked about it. Joseph or Wes, tell me if we talked about this, but who are you rooting for in this movie?
No, he didn't ask that one. I like that.
That's a great question. And I think by design, what Michael Mann wanted to create is two characters going at each other that when you're with that person, so when you're with Vincent Hanna or when you're with Neil McCauley, you're rooting for them. And then you jump into Vincent Hanna's point of view and you're rooting for him. And one of the ways they can make that possible is then they create a pure evil, and that is Waingro. So they create Waingro, who is the guy that is the pure evil. So Neil McCauley and Vincent Hanna, which we talked about a lot in the last podcast, are two sides of the same coin. They are both have strong principles and a moral compass that exist that is unique to them. They respect each other. They're consummate professionals. And it's the Waingros of the world. And there's another Waingro, Otis Wardell, in the book that, and it kind of serves that same purpose. And, it goes way more in depth then we know a lot more about Otis Waddell than we do Wayne Grove. And so there is a contrast between the pure evil, and then there's people that are on different sides of the law, but they have respect, and they are both professionals in what they do, and they believe in excellence, and then they respect each other in terms of doing what you have to do. How do you feel about that? Who did you root for?
I think I'm rooting for Robert De Niro. I think I'm rooting for him to get away. Look, I think to some extent you're rooting for the answer is both, if it's possible. I think inside I want Robert De Niro to get away. And I think I would, in a way, say, the ending is a little bit disappointing because he doesn't. I say disappointing, but it's in that way. And I definitely see this a lot just having worked as a producer and writer, where it's like, disappointing, it's a feeling, right? It means the movie worked for you. It sounds very pejorative, but it's really kind of not. I mean, it didn't go the way you wanted it to. But yeah, I think I'm rooting for the bad guy.
So yeah, in the movie, I'm Neil McCauley all the way. Like, I'm team Neil McCauley. So I didn't know if you were talking about design, or are you talking about like personally, who are you rooting for? And I'm always disappointed when Neil McCauley doesn't get away.
Right.
Yeah, I get your point. If you feel an emotion, if you are emotionally involved in it and you're disappointed, then the movie's doing its job. Whether you're elated or disappointed, you're being moved by it. If you're indifferent or bored, that's when you're in trouble.
Yeah. So there is one detail of it that I would add to it that I did want to ask. I was just looking through kind of the things I wanted to talk about that may have added to that disappointment, and I'm curious if either of you guys has a take on it. How did Hannah get the better of Neil McCauley in that end? Is it tied to the airplane lights casting shot? Was it strategy, or it's just the way this ball bounced did not favor McCauley?
I think it's the weakest thing in the movie, and I'm actually really glad you're talking about this, because I've thought about this a lot, and I went back and watched it, and the reality is that it might have been more so him. I mean, he said, I had a woman, right? I had a woman. And then him randomly seeing, what's her name in the car?
Amy Brenneman.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of gets his thing. So when Robert De Niro gets the jump on him and he runs out and he's in the airplane and it's just him and Hannah, Robert De Niro has the advantage because he is strategically behind something. He knows where Hannah is. Hannah doesn't know where he is. And so he could have timed it, waited, and got the jump on him. And the fact that he's just kind of randomly running and still trying to get away, but like to me, that's the weakest part of the movie, because it's like Neil McCauley's been so methodical, and he was an ex-Marine, and in his if you look at the gunfight at the bank, or you look at everything, or even when you read the book, his whole thing is strategically. He's always stays centered. He stays calm, and he's always outmaneuvering the other guy. He's a genius at it, right? And the thing with Vincent Hanna is kind of like on the juice, man. Like, he's doing he pops Adderall in the book, and he's fucking snorting coke, and he loves the chase. And he's like a chaotic wildflower, like going in, guns blazing. He'll figure it out later, whatever. And strategically, Robert De Niro has the jump on him. He's in the right place. He sees Hannah. Hannah doesn't see him. Hannah comes running in, into which could have been a great ambush for Robert De Niro. And I felt like Robert De Niro should have won that. And I don't know why he didn't win that. And I'm disappointed, because I think I would have been more satisfied if Robert De Niro would have won. Like, if he would have killed Vincent Hanna, got in the car with Amy Brenneman and said, all right, it's taken care of, reverse, and then fucking go. Like, that would have been great. And then seeing him like Christian Slater on the beach at the end of True Romance, like him and his girl and Patricia Arquette.
I always question it when I first saw it, was that with the floodlights as bright as they could be, and they're like, it's directly coming at him. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously creative with the movie and stuff, but like cast the shadow perfectly so he could see it. That he would not be blinded. So that, for me, that was also a little bit unbelievable. But also, like you said, he had position, he had everything.
He knew where he was. He knew when it was the ambush. But just to add to that, before you leave the shadow, when Val Kilmer's walking to the car and he looks up after they rob the bank, he has a bag on. They're smiling at each other. They fucking won. He looks up and sees the cop. There is zero hesitation. He went from like, we fucking, to see the cop, and just started shooting. And they just started going, hog wild and shooting civilians and people and everything like that. De Niro he knows where Han is. He doesn't see him. And all of a sudden, De Niro, it went Hitchcock all of a sudden, where he's slowly drawing the gun up and moving over, and Hannah sees the shadow and turns around and then drops him and shoot. It just, it dissipates it for me.
Yeah. But but I also agree though. It's like, and this leads to, we'll have it later as one of the patron questions, is if he got away, how would he have gotten away? If he killed Al Pacino's character, I think that would have had a very different feeling of him getting away versus like, did he wound him and, and he gets away? That would be interesting.
I think after their scene in the diner, someone had to die, or both of them had to die, but I don't think someone's getting hurt. And like, okay, honey, we gotta catch our flight. We got a half hour. So I think somebody had to die. And I think, look, I'm sure that was up for debate. I know that some stuff I read was that at least De Niro insisted that there were no words, that they didn't have a conversation during the death, which I think was a pretty great choice. But yeah, I have to imagine they talked a lot about who was getting it ultimately.
To answer your question about how would he have gotten away afterwards, if you read the book, it answers that. How Chris Chiarellis gets away kind of answers how Jon Voight's character is a really connected man. And so that's actually one of the most fascinating, is the process of getting Val Kilmer, Chris Chiarellis out of the country. That's one of the best parts of the book. And again, Neil McCauley, one of the things that I like least about the book is obviously the 2000 timeline in the book doesn't have Neil McCauley in it. And so, and I love him. I loved him in the book. I love him in Heat. And I'm like, God, I wish that I wish he didn't have to die. But you're right. One of them has to die from a story point of view. You have two of the greatest actors sitting down being like, I'm going to take you down. If I get the opportunity, I'm taking you down.
Yeah. Guy says, same thing back at you. Someone's got to die.
Yeah. You know what he should have done is he held out his hand at the end, he shakes his hand, and shoots him in the head, and they go down. That was a good question. You have another one?
This is not as good a question, but it is the things I wasn't clear about that I don't know if you guys had a clear read on. When De Niro goes to see Dennis Haysbert, the chef, and says, hey, I think he says to Chris, remember him from Folsom, Cell Block D, whatever it is. Was it planned? Was that just a coincidence? Because the way that whole thing unfolds is really interesting. The whole Dennis Haysbert plot, it starts much sooner. You don't know where it's going to connect. And all of a sudden here, it connects. We're now seeing it. But I'm imagining that, why can't I remember the name of the actor who bails on him because he's got the cops on their tail?
Trejo.
Trejo, yeah. So Trejo was going to be the getaway driver, right? So he bails. So are they coincidentally at this restaurant where he saw where he sees a chef who went to Folsom? This is actually the connectivity?
It reads as a coincidence to me, and I think they set it up with this is the diner they meet at, and they go, hey, you recognize, back there, you served time in Folsom, best getaway driver. So they try to set it up this is the diner they meet. Just so happens the guy that is working behind is this getaway driver, and then they show up, and then it's there because they didn't know that Trejo was going to cancel and not be able to show up. So it had to be a coincidence. But that wasn't clear for me too. I thought about that too. It's seeing that, and then it's okay, but I guess they kind of set it up before. If you were writing this, would that be too coincidental for you?
I will tell you, I am not Michael Mann, but I would definitely get notes on it. I would expect notes and get notes on it.
Michael Mann probably hasn't had a note since Miami Vice.
I don't know. I somehow want to think it wasn't a coincidence, because calling it a coincidence, I guess, just feels too coincidental. It feels like they have this big heist they've been planning for how long? A month, a meticulous guy. Is it possible that Trejo, because I'm trying to remember if you've seen Trejo as the getaway driver, So maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was just going to be another guy robbing the bank with them. And he always knew they needed a driver, but he was going to he knew this guy worked there. That's why he picked the diner. I don't know. I'm reluctant to call it a coincidence, even though I think you're probably right. I think it is.
Yeah, but I think that would go against Neil McCauley's philosophy. You know, there's no detail left to chance, because he could have easily went back there and the guy says, "Nah, man, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going to do that," and the whole thing's fucked. So it makes more sense that Estrello connected that. But the thing that Michael Mann does, and like there's another level. So there's like a metaphysical level. So for instance, like if you go back to Natalie Portman, her character, Neil McCauley and Vincent Hanna, they believe there's a darkness that lives around them, and that everybody that they love is eventually going to get hurt and destroyed. And that ends up happening in their life over and over again. And the more innocent that thing is that's close to them, the harder their suffering is. And so Vincent Hanna and Neil McCauley quietly think this. This is like a deeper thing that they think, and this is why Neil McCauley's like 30. You never have anybody that you can't leave in 30 seconds flat. You can't get close to anybody. You can't have this. Part of that is afraid because the darkness that lives around him is going to hurt them. And Vincent Hanna has the same thing, you know. And with him leaving his wife and what happened to Natalie Portman and everything, it's like subconsciously he thinks that the longer he's going to stay with them, the more he's going to destroy them. Another thing in the movie that is not as clear is that his wife was also doing drugs and things like that. So there's like there's a cosmic metaphysical force within his story. So if you go back and read the story, the way that all of their stories, Vincent Hanna's story, Neil McCauley's, the way that they're always attracted to each other and colliding off each other and affecting each other as it goes, there's something cosmically pulling them together and colliding off each other. And if you read the book and watch the movie, thematically, there's these reoccurring pools that they have. There's this reoccurring things that are happening in their life, and there's that seem coincidental, but it happens over. There's a pattern to it that then you realize, oh, this is what he's saying. This is a very fatalistic story, and these personal beliefs that they have about the darkness that lives around them and it affects everything around them is manifesting itself. And so it kind of operates on many levels like that. So if there's a coincidence like this, there's a reason for the coincidence, but it's more into the thematic philosophical reasons and foundation under the story. And for me, probably the reason the coincidence didn't bump you as much as it would bump you if it's a lesser story, and then there's a coincidence because they needed an easy solve to a plot point. You probably instinctively feel that there's reasons and motivations for these coincidences that ultimately make it a richer and fuller story underneath it.
You know, I always, from the first time I saw it, I had issues with the Dennis Haysbert storyline. And this is my question to you, Evan, because like you bring it up, is like, wouldn't it have been smarter or better if they wrote it where during the events of the movie where they're having this Haysbert storyline, that they were having a meeting at that diner and they recognized him, put a pin in it, and then when Trejo cannot drive, that it's there, versus it just kind of the lucky coincidence that it just happened at the right time, versus if they had some foreshadowing with it where it didn't seem like they were unconnected. And it's like, why are we getting this Dennis Haysbert storyline other than for it to serve a purpose at the perfect intended time, versus, oh, this is somebody that they knew, but he wants to live a good life now, obviously, where if they had that kind of friction earlier on and then revisit it, would that have made that storyline more interesting versus where it seems completely unconnected to where it just hits that convergent moment where it's perfect?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely would have healed what feels like a coincidence. I mean, it would have been a setup and a payoff, but it was such a specific choice. And I mean, I saw this movie recently, Dragged Across Concrete. Have you guys seen this?
Mm-mm.
Mel Gibson, Vince Vaughn. But clearly the director, and it's pretty good. I hate even mentioning it without knowing the director's name.
I've heard that a few times now that it's a good movie that should be checked out. Sorry to interrupt.
It should be checked out. And the director, I think, is clearly very influenced by Michael Mann. And there is totally a storyline that you're like, why am I watching this? And then it dovetails and it goes away you completely don't expect to. And doing that is such an interesting choice. I mean, I think, Joseph, honestly, like my writing brain almost doesn't work that way yet, where I'm just kind of more linear, where I think I would just be like, you don't need any of that stuff. You don't necessarily even need, so fine, we're going into the final job one guy short and someone else is going to drive. Like there's a lot of different solutions, even if you lose Trejo, to not needing that coincidence, which makes me think, I kind of think Wes is onto something, especially because what is that storyline? That storyline is Dennis Haysbert and his girlfriend or wife or fiance, whatever they are, and her, lovely scenes where she's like, I'm proud of you. And you can see this criminal swelling with like, oh, what is it? Like pride? No one's ever said to me they're proud of me. I'm proud of you for being a man, for taking the shitty job, but, standing up and being a man and doing all these things. And then ultimately watching him fail and give in this moment and then leave this lovely woman as they're all leaving women. I mean, this movie is definitely pre, Me Too, and there's not really a particularly strong female character in this, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's an interesting discussion that we would need a woman to take part in. But yeah, like she is yet another woman who's kind of left behind as their man makes a bad choice and either dies or
I would just insert. Dies. I want to insert right there. The movie is pre Me Too, and the book is post Me Too, and even Charlene is such a more dynamic, thorough, fleshed out character. And there's another character that is close to Chris, and I'm not going to give anything away, that's a fantastic female character. And might I add, the sex in this book is hot. Wow. It is some hot stuff. Now I know what my grandma talks about with 50 Shades of Grey, because I think that there's a woman writing this. I think I think women are better at writing sex scenes than men. And there's some, like, I don't think Michael Mann can get me as hot as I'm not sure him writing a sex scene is going to really get me as hot as somebody else.
A man writing it would be like, me put pee-pee in. Ooh, good.
Yeah. And then it's like she gave me a look. And then I grabbed her boobies, and started ripping her pants down. There's no foreplay, or anything like that. So
going back to that movie, Dragged Across Concrete, have you seen that director's other movies?
I did, and again, I didn't see Bone Tomahawk.
Oh, Bone Tomahawk.
Brawlin' Cell Block 99.
Brawlin' Cell Block 99, which I also really liked in that same kind of way, where I'm like, there's something going on here that's really interesting. I don't know where any of this is going. I'm a little bit bothered by it, but I'm also like still really invested and want to see it through. We should at least say his name, right? I mean,
it is S. Craig Zoller.
Oh,
I was a big fan of Bone Tomahawk. I really enjoyed that movie. It's got Kurt Russell.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a big plus comma for me, but it's also a type of movie that I really enjoy. I love that bizarre, weird stuff. Yeah.
We're going to wrap it up there?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
You got a heart out?
I got a heart on. Do we have a top 5?
Well, we're going to do a couple things first.
Okay.
First thing we're going to do is what patrons would like to know in regards to the heat.
6 inches.
Alrighty. For the both
apparently Evan's got a hog on him. So what you got, Evan?
You got a hog.
Joseph, wait, should we cut that? I don't know.
Yeah.
If I was single, I would
cut that. Frosty knows. Yeah. Alrighty. All right. For both of you, what is the best over-the-top performance by Al Pacino?
Sin of a Woman. I think that's the only time it worked.
Say that. Yeah. His first Oscar too, right? Wasn't that his first Oscar?
I think
maybe his only Oscar.
So we're going with Sin of a Woman?
Yeah, I'm going to go Sin of a Woman because I think that style, like, that was kind of like the first time he was like that. I mean, I guess in Dog Day Afternoon when he's like, Attica, and all that shit. But for
Dick
me,
Tracy, I'm trying to find a different one. Just
I was thinking, what was it? Devil's Advocate. because he's pretty over the top in that as the devil.
Every Given Sunday, he was over the top, but I didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy his. He did not feel like a football coach to me. Yeah, but if you're asking like what was my favorite over the top performance, because I think it really works in Sin of the Woman.
Sin of a Woman. Okay, cool. For both of you, would you have gone back to kill Wayne Grove?
I would have. I get clouded by emotion, and I could get overtaken, and I would have. Like if you ask me now, like if you ask me when I was watching the movie, and I'm like, no, don't go back, don't you fucking go, you don't need to. Then I would like if I'm calm and intellectual, I wouldn't have done it. But if I got triggered or if I was mad, then yeah, I would have done it recklessly.
I definitely would not have. I don't think Neil McCauley would have. I mean, there's times in the script in the movie where he's like, these guys are a luxury to us. Like we can't do that. So he knows better. And it's one of those things that like bothers me a little, but it's like the good bother, right? And he's just so on tilt at the end of this movie. He's making bad decisions like that. And I actually think that's part of what we were talking about before, his ultimate death. He's on tilt. Like this is not the Neil McCauley that we've seen through 3/4 of the movie. I think he's making bad decisions and they're compounding themselves.
But are you saying that bothers you, or are you saying you understand it?
Both. I don't think those things are at odds. I mean, it does bother me because he had the choice before. They talked about it. They said, what about Wayne Grove? What about Van Zandt? He's like, those guys are luxuries. Like, we can't do anything. It's the bank. Or like, he knows that. His whole philosophy, which came from someone else's philosophy, is like, if you can't leave it in 30 seconds and run, like, that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do. That's the discipline. And all of a sudden, the discipline is out the window. So it's not necessarily consistent, but it makes for an exciting third act, and I get it. It's a little out of character.
So I would say, and maybe this is because I just read the book, I would say I think it's completely earned. And one of the things about the movie that I wasn't as clear on as I am now in the book is how deep those relationships go between his crew. The book really takes time to show you how much that these people mean to each other, how much they care for each other. Because when I'm watching the movie, I'm like, maybe he's had a history with some of them, and maybe there's some newer guys on, and maybe these are all just professional. And also, like his ability to disconnect also extends to his crew, but that's not the case. That's not true. The people that are closest to him in his life are his crew and the people that he works with. And then also the thing that he abhors most are the people like Wayne Grove that abhors most in this world. And so when the whole heist is ruined and he sees the people that he loves most getting murdered, and he thinks that Chris, who's basically like a younger brother's son to him, is probably not going to make it or get caught, then he loses his philosophy and everything. And that's the reason now that I look back, and the reason that he had to die is because he violated his own rules.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because the key difference between before, when he says these people are luxuries, we need to just focus on the bank or get out of Dodge, everyone's alive. So yeah, this guy was singularly responsible for deaths of, at that point, 2 of the people in Trejo and Sizemore. And maybe Chris. So yeah, and that also feels very like, look, if you're in prison, there's some prison rules that you probably also live by, and I think he would have to pay for that.
And what's an interesting detail is that he violated that philosophy already when, if you're living in as pure as possible, when Chris gets shot and he can't walk anymore, and he goes back to save him, and he pulls him out of the thing. So there are 4 exceptions in this philosophy, and it is his weakness, and ultimately it's the thing that gets him killed.
By the way, that Wayne Grove death, that's one of those, like, I'm so invested in the movie at that point that, like, that Wayne Grove death to me isn't painful enough that I want him to do the, like, no, he like took a hammer to Trejo and raped his wife and did all this stuff.
He got off easy.
Evan.
Like, yeah, a shot to the chest. I mean, look, they made or whatever it was. Like, it looked painful, but it's one bullet. I take that over Trejo's death any day.
Evan, wait till you meet Otis Otis Wardell.
Alrighty, for
Way
both
too
of
many.
you, you've already answered this pretty much, but if Neil got away, would it have ruined the ending of the film? If it just like basically, let's say if Neil did not say "I have time," he just kept driving with Edie, and it just ended kind of like the same thing with the music where Al Pacino's character is looking out and he's just like he got away.
Oh, that. Well, no, I mean that would have been.
Or he kills Al Pacino. I mean, one of those two variants.
So
if Neil got away under either of those circumstances, would it have ruined the film for you?
So the thing is I don't personally like that Neil was killed. I get disappointed every time I watch it, which we just talked about earlier. But I think it would violate the philosophy of the movie because he laid out his philosophy, he laid out his rules, and he broke his own rules. And these are the consequences for breaking those rules.
I think the only other alternative ending would have been that they both died, that they managed to kill each other. And look, given, if I would sit on a high horse here, I guess I'd kind of say like the whole point of the movie is like they're two sides of the same coin. They do, there are phrases that criminals use that the cops use that are the same phrase, the way they, he's checking his gun and chambering rounds and is the same, they both check their weapons in elevators. Like the whole time they're building these similarities. They're looking at each other, even when they're not together. One of my favorite shots is when De Niro is kind of on like whatever that heat vision is. And you just see like the hollowed out eyes and Pacino is in the back of that trailer. And it's like, Michael Mann is really making you feel like they are in the same room looking at each other, but they're not. So it would have made a lot of sense that they kill each other. I don't know how I would have felt about that ending. I don't know if I would have been equally disappointed in a whole different way. I don't know if is that a thing that really happens? Do people really kill each other at the same time at a gunfight?
I will tell you this. I always had a problem with Chris Shirless going back for Charlene, after the heat. I'm like, dude, get the fuck out. But when you read the book, and when him and Charlene first meet and you see some of those, then you're like, yeah, I'd be going, I'd risk it all. The sun does rise and set with her. I get it, brother.
Alrighty, for Wes, if you were to land a role in the Heat sequel, would you be a good guy or a bad guy?
Bad guy.
Yeah.
I think the bad guys in Heat are infinitely more interesting than, with the exception of Pacino, than the good guys.
I mean, if you were a good guy, you would be that douche that Pacino says, "How are you? You okay?"
Right.
Wait, which guy?
But
the guy that got hurt.
Would you take a good guy role? Just to be clear, if Michael Mann decides
just to be in it.
Yeah, 100%. Because Michael T, I think, is one of the unsung heroes in this movie. He gives a fantastic performance, and when he convinces Charlene to do what he thinks that she's going to do, which is the right thing, the way that he convinces her and the way that he lays out the future of her son, what's going to happen to her and her life, and he's just really, it was really done well. That character, a character like his, and maybe this has a lot to do with Michael Mann as well, who has one or two important scenes. A lot of times they'll show up the days they're working, they do their scenes, and it feels disconnected. Even skilled actors can pull it off to where you just kind of go with it and everything. But when a character feels lived in the group, and there's a chemistry and a relationship, and you can't fool relationships. You can't fool, and the fact that like the relationships with the crew and the cop, and then he talks to her. It's just really well done. And Ted Levine is always good. And so even like his smaller supporting roles are just really talented, experienced actors.
Alrighty, that's the end for questions. Now we have trivia time.
All right.
Where you're going to face off against each other.
I don't like it. I don't. No.
Raise your hand.
I don't like face. I'm not going to face off.
What? Okay. Fine,
we'll face off against you
fine.
or somebody else.
Okay.
All right.
We're going to start off with, why was the opening sequence with the security truck problematic and also very unrealistic?
Because Brinks trucks are made to not be knocked over.
Bing, bing, bing. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, you should have, but you didn't raise your hands, and you didn't put it in the form of a question.
Okay. What type of masks were the crew wearing during
hockey?
Okay, there we go. Which actor hated
You didn't raise your hand.
the masks?
Oh, Val Kilmer.
You're
Val
right
Kilmer.
again. Alrighty. What was Edie's
Did it
job?
freeze?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Wait. Did it freeze? I didn't. It froze. You froze.
Oh, it froze? I said, what was Edie's job?
She worked at a bookstore.
Which was because
She's a writer?
no, the bookstore was to pay the bills. What was she there for?
Yeah. Because he also says you can do your job, like when he's trying to convince her to come.
That was her job. So I
You see her like
I won
working
one.
on a computer. Yeah, you should get that is
Half
very
credit.
literally her
Okay.
job.
She was a graphic designer.
Graphic designer. I knew it was like on a computer. Yeah.
Why did she go out? Why did she move to L.A.?
I think she felt
To
as
be a
though she had
graphic
to be there to, who knows?
She had to come meet Neil McCauley.
There it is. Okay. What was the one green screen scene in the film?
Oh, the Los Angeles backdrop at Neil's house, Neil and Edie's place. And the reason
that rubbed me always, like, I didn't like it, but supposedly Mann hated the original shot of it.
The reason I know that is because Christopher Nolan interviewed the cinematographer of Heat, and they were talking about how the cinematographer is pro digital and Christopher Nolan is anti digital, and they have a bit of a heated debate in the thing. And then, when you look at the only green screen shot, if you look at like it's the only thing that's kind of like, wait, what? It's like it looks like a spaceship behind him.
It really looked off.
Yeah.
Alrighty, what was Mann working on right before Heat? And I will tell you this: he never did make this film.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a deep cut.
Give us a hint. Give us a hint.
A famous actor who died very young.
James Dean?
Bingo. Yes, a James Dean biopic. I think you both picked this one up when we were watching it or talking about it. What was the name of the restaurant with the famous
Kate Manalini's?
Bingo. Again?
You've eaten there, right, Evan?
I had many a lunch there.
I've never.
I was so sad when it closed. I was so sad when it closed. For this reason, how can you close like a place where this scene happened?
Who didn't want to be in the movie? One of the main.
Oh, Edie.
Yeah.
Bingo.
I know.
You're right.
I know she thought it was like too violent or without a moral center.
Can I just say, I think that's bullshit. That sounds like an actress or an actor story. There's so many. What she probably talked to Mann and was like, I mean, there is a lot of violence in it. And he's like, but this is your thing. And she's like, okay, but there was never a question she wasn't going to do this movie. Are you kidding? You're going to say no to Michael Mann?
So Wes, are you judging Amy? let me know when you get it. Let me know.
That is a recycled joke, but I do love it. I do love it.
Well done. All righty. I think this one, you brought it up in this recording. What state prison did the cast members go to? Yeah, there we go.
Who actually served time is Trejo.
Yeah,
he was actually a prisoner in Folsom. Was that another question?
I was going to put it in there, but I thought that was like everybody kind of knows that in there. Alrighty, so this is a deep cut that I kind of can see. What real life NBA coach did Pacino take inspiration for his character?
Pat Riley.
Yep,
good one.
Pat Riley.
What other famous character did they model themselves of? Michael Douglas in Wall Street.
Yes, you're right.
And the only reason I knew that about Pacino is because Michael Douglas says in an interview that he was like, I modeled after Pat Riley. He goes, and then fucking Al Pacino came and copied me.
Alrighty. Who are the two musicians in the cast?
Henry Rollins.
And?
I mean, Ashley Judd comes from a musical family, but...
was Kurt Cobain's ex-wife in this?
No. It was a very short scene, and it was at a club.
Oh, yeah, Tone Loc.
Oh, yeah. Good job.
Alrighty. Who is the one cast member in the movie from L.A. Takedown?
Oh, I know this.
You should know this.
Fuck. He's he's really small part.
He has a cameo, basically. I'm
not going to know his name. Is it Jeff?
Just what was the character and what was his role in the movie?
He was a cop and he worked.
No. It was Ralph. The dude who was doing it to Pacino's wife.
Oh.
Xander Berkeley.
Also of Terminator 2.
He was Waingro.
No, I would have been wrong then, because there's another character deep cut that.
Well, that's the next question. There's another deep cut question. What was the name of the actor in the wheelchair? Give you a hint. He's best known for a pretty well known Michael Mann film.
Why am I not remembering an actor in a wheelchair?
Wait, yeah, I'm not remembering that either.
He was the one selling the plans to Neil.
Oh, right. He's in Manhunter.
Bingo. Yes, Manhunter.
Yeah.
Tom Noonan. Yeah, that was kind of like it was a twofold question, but yeah, because his look in Manhunter was like pretty iconic. Now, what were Robert Van Zant's last words? And if you don't know, take a wild guess.
Robert Van Sant last.
Please don't.
Oh,
where is everyone?
No.
I'm going to say it. You're going to get 5 more seconds.
Wait. Give me a second.
What took you so long?
What took you so long?
I don't know.
How the hell would I know? He gets blasted.
What is he watching on TV? Is it hockey?
Hockey.
It was hockey.
Yeah, it was hockey.
Alrighty, what movie was Val Kilmer filming at the same time?
Batman Forever.
Bingo. Who was actually cast as Chris when Val Kilmer turned the movie down because
Keanu Reeves.
Oh, damn, you're on. Okay, how many times does De Niro say before he kills Waingro?
3 times.
Say twice.
3 times.
3 times.
Thrice.
Thrice.
Look at me. Like, dude, De Niro.
Look at
this
me.
This is one of De Niro's.
Wes, you're crushing me. You should have accepted this as a challenge.
No, Evan. This is not. This is you and I. You and I are a team.
Fun. This is just fun.
We're a team.
I don't like to compete against friends.
Trophy.
All right. In the shootout, was the gunfire post-production or live?
Live.
Oh, that was definitely live. Yeah.
Live.
It's so powerful. It takes the air out of your chest when you're listening to it. They put mics on.
Still to this day, like when I rewatched it, I'll see a recent movie, and that movie just has such a good sound to it, where it just is so visceral versus a movie where you can tell that it's obviously post.
Well, he has this great interview because they're asking that question of the violence in the movie, and do you feel responsible because we live in such a violent time now and everything like that. And he goes, who watches that shootout and says, oh, I want to do that? He goes, it looks fucking horrible and painful, and the guns are so loud and scary.
All right, last question. What were De Niro's characters' last words?
There was no words.
Yes, there were. No.
He chose no words.
No, he said to Pacino.
I told you I wasn't going back.
Well, you're definitely crushing it, buddy.
Yeah.
Nice work.
It, man.
Nice work.
Alrighty, now we are on to our top 5.
Okay, some of these I haven't seen.
What?
Yeah, I have not seen. Oh, you don't have them up there. I didn't see Black.
These are all the movies, or all the movies to choose from?
These are the movies that made the pool from our patrons.
Okay, because I didn't see Black Hat. I didn't see the Johnny Depp one where he's a criminal.
Public Enemies.
Public Enemies.
Yeah.
Okay, now I think we're probably going to disagree on Last of the Mohicans. I think our only thing we're going to disagree on is Last of the Mohicans.
Is that going to even be in the top 5?
For me, it's competing. It's up there in the top 3.
Okay, all right.
Were you? I seem to remember you weren't like too hot on Last of the Mohicans. I'm talking to Evan.
Yeah,
I know you're talking to him.
It's not on my top 5. I did a top 5 in advance, and it is not in it.
To me, The Keep it gets a bit too slow in certain areas.
But it's so interesting. See, that's a movie I would love to see if they, like going back and redoing it.
Yeah, I'd like to go back and see it. Wait a minute. Oh, Manhunter is probably my number 2. Shit, I would say Manhunter competes with Heat.
We have the same 1 and 2, Wes. I'll tell you that much. Heat, Manhunter.
Oh, do we? Oh, you know what? You guys are going to think this is weird. I never saw the movie Miami Vice.
I half watched it, and I was kind of like, meh.
Did you see it, Evan?
I did. It's my number 5. It's a mess in some ways, but it's just so I don't know. Look, that might be like a childhood nostalgia thing. Like we talked about Don Johnson last time.
Yeah.
I just think, it was so big and ridiculous and mulleted and I kind of love it in spite of not necessarily thinking it's the same quality movie as something like Heat.
It's better than Public Enemies, though. That's for sure.
So the reason I didn't see it is I think I talked about this last. Did I talk about how much I loved Miami Vice in the last one?
We talked a little bit about our Don Johnson love. I think.
So fucking Miami Vice, like when Miami Vice, like me and my stepdad, I thought it was the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. And when I watched that show, whatever. So when they did the movie, it's just I didn't have any reason to go see it. It didn't have the same. It wasn't the same time period. It wasn't the same actors. It didn't feel like Miami Vice to me. I really like Collateral. I'm a big fan of
this one.
Evan, would you?
We have the same top three, Wes.
Oh, okay.
Manhunter, Collateral.
All right.
Okay, so what's
from here? We will veer off.
We will veer off. Have you seen Thief?
I have not seen Thief.
Okay, Evan, we are going to do a movie night. We're going to watch Thief. Thief is fucking awesome. And the soundtrack for Thief is awesome-er. And he Michael Mann always talks about like he kind of regrets like the soundtrack because it is 80s synth like in your face. And it was before people were doing that, so it was like the first, and it's fucking money. I think it's Tangerine Dream that did it. And I think it's so badass. He wish he would have had like other things, but I think it's other than Godfather, it's what's his name, the lead in it,
James Caan.
James Caan. I think it's his best role, one of his best roles. I think he's fantastic in it. So, but if you haven't seen it, Evan, it doesn't qualify.
We'll do a movie night.
Yeah,
movie night.
But it won't qualify for the top 5. We both have to see it. You keep highlighting The Insider.
Number 4 is going to be. No, okay, I'm just saying.
Listen, I am a big Last of the Mohicans fan. I'm a sucker for historical movies like that, especially U.S. history. The French and Indian War, fascinating to me. So, did that make your list, Evan?
Last of the Mohicans is not on my list.
What's next on your list?
Next on my list is The Insider.
All right,
I agree. What's number 5?
For me, this is where, and I fully accept that this is kind of an outlandish thing to say, but my 5 is Miami Vice. I don't have Last of the Mohicans. I have Miami Vice there at 5. I thought, Wes, I'll be honest, I was kind of like trying to put together a slightly controversial one so we could have
a debate,
some differences.
Yeah.
And fight over it. Like, I'm shocked at your Manhunter at 2 because I also had it there. But
I love Manhunter.
It's so good, and it's just I
I'll
watched it so many times.
I'll throw something out there controversial that you probably will disagree with me on. Is I am more. I wouldn't want to say I'd prefer Brian Cox's Hannibal Lecter to Anthony Hopkins. Brian Cox was scarier to me because he could be like, if I saw Anthony Hopkins like not blinking, he'd be like, and I ate his liver with some fire. I'd be like, that's a crazy motherfucker. Like, I'm staying away from that guy. That's a weirdo. That's a fucking crazy. Brian Cox, when he shows up, he's like, did you get my card? Oh, yeah. How is she? And it's like, fucking, this freaks me out. Like, he draws him in with a little bit of charm. And then when William Peterson, is that who it was? William Peterson? When he says, he goes, I know you're smarter than me. And he says, then why do you think you caught me? And he goes, because you're insane. And it was the first indication that he's insane. Right. And so then you're like, oh my God. And then this guy, and then as the movie evolves and as he does the shit with his phone and everything, you're like, oh no, this guy is insane, but he's a genius. And so that shit that's way scarier to me than when you're like, oh, this is a crazy person. Hello, crazy person. I get it. You're a crazy genius. You don't blink your eyes and all that. Okay. I see that. But if somebody like can pull you in and be like, did you get my card? It's like, okay. So, one of the things that's not on the list, and I will say, now granted, Michael Mann didn't direct this movie, but if he did direct a movie where a man was having marital problems, and he was locked in a tall building with with terrorists, I think Die Hard would have been Michael Mann's best movie. I think for sure.
I mean, you can't take a perfect movie, give it to a great filmmaker, and be like, it would be even better. I mean, credit to McTiernan. Come on, and that guy, I would love to do a whole podcast on him, like going from Predator to this, like upward motion, making great, kick-ass, legendary movies.
No, the joke is, and I understand and you're right, but the joke is we always try to find a way to get Die Hard on the list, and no matter how random or how way around the barn it is, we always trying to find a way to get Die Hard. Like we argued forever, like how it was a romantic comedy and like every genre, and try to highlight
a Christmas movie.
It's that's yeah. All righty, all right. Let's see what the Patreons. Heat, Collateral, Last of the Mohicans, The Insider, and Manhunter. So we're pretty close.
Pretty dang close. Yeah.
So they didn't have Miami Vice.
Did you guys agree on these top fives, or is because like Miami Vice, you have not seen it, Wes? It's kind of like beef.
I don't think seeing it is going to make him put it in the top five, though.
Wait, so Evan, like you have no love for Last Mohicans?
I have some. I think it's a good movie. It's just for whatever reason, it's not a movie that, especially given the time it came out. I think I watched it. They would show it in school, right? Because it was kind of like it passed as like, oh, this is a Native American story, even though. I don't know. By the way, is it a white savior? Is it a problematic movie now? Is it? No, is he a white savior?
It's the Mohican savior.
Is it cultural appropriation? Yeah, but you have a white guy saving the Mohicans.
Yeah. Who's the white guy that's saving him?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
He's a Mohican in the
movie.
In
the movie, not in real life. You can't have. That's not okay. That's not okay. That's not okay.
Well, I don't know. We should do a 23andMe. Maybe he has some.
He that he was born in Britain? Probably not.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up. There's probably something in there that will disqualify that movie. And I did not think that through because I thought that was a safe pick because the only white hero in it gets burned at the stake.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not why it is or not. I guess I just look at it. It felt like a school movie to me.
Dude, this is gonna sound so nerdy, but I had the soundtrack of Last of the Mohicans. I think it's such a powerful movie score. I love the score in that movie.
You just play it for your girlfriends back then. You're like, hey, baby.
No, I played it in secret when nobody else is around. Like when I played the Braveheart soundtrack. Evan, thank you for being such a good buddy and such a fun guest on the podcast. This was a great show, and I'm so excited for your movie, The Outlaws.
Everybody check it out, The Outlaws.
Everybody check it out.
Netflix. Yeah. Thank you, Wes.
Every time you watch The Outlaws on Netflix, an angel gets its wings.